Hello everybody and welcome back. So in the last video we started to prepare our AbstractCRUDL service for some action, and in this video we are going to continue. So we left some to-dos for ourselves, what we need to take care in this video. So let's just get into it. As you can see here, we are having to fetch, we are fetching our entity, either initializing it or fetching it from the database. And we said that we need to map a DTO to entity, and then we are saving it, and then we added to do that we want to replace this with the converter. So we don't want to call this method here to fetch it by the ID. We actually want to replace this with the converter. Okay, so let's just do that. So let's add our converter. So as you may remember, in previous videos we created our AbstractDTOConverter. So let's just put it in here. So AbstractDTOConverter, which takes in an entity and a DTO. So those are the types that it needs, and the converter. So what we also need to do is we need to add to the constructor. Here we can make this final, and we can say final AbstractDTOConverter, again entity DTO and converter. We can break the line here and we can do this dot converter equals the converter that we are passing in. Perfect. Now we have our converter here, and now we can say here please do convert stuff for us. So converter.convert, and what are we going to call? We are going to call the entity, so the method where we just pass in the entity, and we are going to pass in the saved one. So as you can see, we are doing stuff. So we are providing a DTO, we are creating an entity, we are mapping all of the properties from the DTO to the entity, we are saving that entity to the database using the repository, and the saved entity is then converted with our fancy converter, and we are returning that final DTO that should contain all of the properties that we are doing there. So let's just make this final, and you may notice that we could have just put this part here and it would do exactly the same thing, but I like to keep a variable here, so a descriptive one, which with some name that it can actually tell me what it is, so that I know exactly what I'm saving, so that I don't make any mistakes. So this is a saved entity. Let's just add something like save entity to EB, convert saved entity and return DTO. Perfect. So one more thing that we could do now is, if you remember, in our distributed entity class we have these created and modified timestamps. So we are creating an entity in one case and we are modifying it in another case, so maybe we can set these properties now. So this would be a nice place. So for example, imagine that later on we create a user entity. You could, in some user specific class, when you're creating a user and stuff like that, you could set those properties there, but then you would have to repeat this for every entity that you have. Since we are working with the abstract stuff, so in our abstract service is the perfect place to do this. So in the case where we are creating the entity for the very first time, it will be this init entity. This is where we want to set it. So we can do something here. So we can copy this part and place it here. So this will be our entity, and this will be the place where we want to return it. Cool. But we also want to say entity set created local datetime. Now. So this instant, this is what we are setting to our entity. We can also make this final, and we have covered the created timestamp. So this will be only called whenever we are initializing the entity, which is only when we don't have an ID, when our DTO is new. And in the case where we are updating the entity, we want to set the modified timestamp, but we also want to set it in the case where we are creating it for the first time, because technically we are modifying it. So in both of those cases, we can say entity set modified local datetime now. One thing that you may have noticed, and I think even IntelliJ is complaining about that, that we could have a possible null pointer exception. Maybe you're wondering what this sonalint is. So it's a plugin that I have installed. I can give you some hints later on how to install it and what to use it for, but it gives you this nice stuff. It has some rules which you should follow, and it complains about it if you're not following them, and it even gives you the levels, like this is a major bug, which definitely it is, and this is something like a minor code smell. So a null pointer exception is something that we would hit hard here if we are using this for the first time. We are saving a DTO, and actually no, in the case where we would yeah, in both cases. So if we are initializing entity and something bad happens and we catch this, we print this track trace and we return null, and then this null, the entity is null, and we try to set the modified timestamp, that would fail. And this is an issue. And also in here, in this case, if we try to find it by the ID, but it doesn't exist in the database, and we return null here, you also try to set it modified, and then boom, you have a null pointer exception. So we have to do some check for it. So let's do if entity equals null, we want to return null here. But we would also we should also log something here, so we can add that for later. To do log error. We'll do logging later on in one of the different videos. Okay, and let's add a comment here. Set. So we are setting the modified timestamp, we are saving the entity, doing everything, but we are not mapping the properties to the entity. How do we do that? So in order to do that, we need a method that we could call here. This method should be something, named something like update entity, or I don't know, something like that. But the problem arises in the cases where we want to update the properties that are specific to a class, so like a user class, for example, that where you have a username and stuff like that. You can't do that in an abstract service, so you need to do it in a different class, in a different way. So in order to do that, we create something like protected abstract void update update entity, and it takes two parameters, an entity and DTO. So let's see what it's complaining about. Again, the same problem as we had before. Our AbstractCRUDL service is not abstract, so let's make it so. That's done. And what do we want to do here? We want to call this update entity and DTO. So as you may have noticed now, this is just abstract, so it doesn't do anything, but this will be so when we introduce, for example, a user service where we have to implement this stuff. And maybe we have to find a way how to handle the not user specific properties. So like, where do you set where do you set a ID and stuff like that. So everything that's not shared, is it nice to do it like that when we're setting the modified timestamp, or do we do it in some different way? For now, we can do it like this, so maybe that's not an issue. But if we add some more properties to our distributed entity, so to our also base DTO, we have to think about where we set this. What could we do now is one more thing. So IntelliJ offers this type of comments, basically, so that you can collapse part of code. This is not something that you have to do, but it's really nice if you do it. So if you do something like this and write region, and for example, these are the members of this class, and then you just end that region, and if you press Ctrl+Shift-, it collapses everything. And you can see here that it collapses and it says member. So for example, here for the constructor, we could create a region called constructor. And we can end it here. And here we can create a region called implementation. And here we can actually, below this one, we can end this region, and I'm not sure why this moved. So let's just put it here, actually this, and okay, we forgot one. And here this will be our helper region or something. And let's just and then if you collapse everything, you have this really nice stuff, and then you can easily tell where everything is. Okay, so that will be it for this video. In the next video, we finally start to implement something that's not abstract. So we are going to implement our user. So we are going to add a new entity, a user entity with some properties, a user DTO, a user service, a user API. Everything will be about the users, and we are going to use our abstract stuff to help us with those user specific classes. So as always, if you have any questions, if something is unclear, if you have some hints for me, if you have some points that you would like me to mention, please do leave a comment or just write me an email. And yeah, please do like this video and subscribe to my channel for more exciting videos. And not sure what I wanted to say, but I will see you guys in the next video.